Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. This week's guest is an incredible man who is a true entrepreneur, a man who loves this family and this community, and is a true visionary. My guest this week is the Honorable Colonel Jamie Massie. So I'm sitting in the offices of Georgian International with a spectacular view and an even more spectacular guest. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs, Mr. Massie. Can I call you Jamie?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're just so huge in town. I got to know if I can call you Jamie or Mr. Massie. So let me get to know you a little bit, because this show could easily be a 2-hour show on just getting to know you and your involvement in the community. But let's find out about you, the person, because you're really a fascinating man and you have so much drive and compassion for this community as well too. I'd love to know a little bit more about you. So if you could tell me, where are you from, how'd you get to Barrie, and where did it start?
Born in Toronto, a long time ago now. My history and the roots go pretty deep in the community, though. My grandfather was a member of the 48th Highlanders in the First World War, and he was wounded at Vimy Ridge, April 9th, 1917, and lost his leg. So he came home and became a prosthetist, started making artificial limbs. And then in 1929, he came north with 4 other friends that had all lost legs actually in France, and they all worked together at Sunnybrook, and they bought cottages at the 10th line of Innisfil.
What a camaraderie, I guess, that you would have, those 4 guys would be.
They were tough people. I mean, they would have, what we understand today and understand PTSD and just medical advances today, they didn't have back in 1917. They didn't have penicillin in 1917. So, no. I mean, the reality of war in those days was pretty profound on them. But they found solace in each other, I think, and they raised their families together. So I was fortunate when I was born. My parents brought me up to the cottage. Like, I was born in May, and I guess I came up in June. So, I basically have spent my life up here since then.
Well, thank you to your father for his service, because to be honest, back then there's nobody ever been tougher than nails as those men.
Both my father and my grandfather served, so they both, we pay a lot of tribute to them as a family still. And, certainly in my role as honorary colonel at the base, a lot of that is in saying thank you to them for their service and for the freedom that we enjoy, the fact that we get to sit and, can gather and talk. I mean, that's pretty nice.
And that's a great message to carry on too, because a lot of people, we need to make sure that message carries on, because you and I were talking earlier off camera about, the concept of war and how some people, like, some presidents we know, like to talk about war as if it's a game, and it's not, and it was awful. It's an awful place.
Truly awful. And, at the base, the entrance to the base, the monument that stands there, it has a quote from General Sir Arthur Currie, who is the first commander of the Canadian Corps, and he wrote to his troops before the Battle of Passchendaele, and he wrote, I'll paraphrase a bit, but he said, to those of you who fall facing the enemy, I say you will not die, but step into immortality. Your mothers will not lament your fate, but will be proud to have borne such sons. Your grateful country will forever revere your names, and God will take you unto himself. And I think, in 1918, when he wrote that, he obviously made a commitment and a promise to his troops that this country, our country, would forever remember them for their sacrifice.
Lest we forget.
And I think what happened, though, is I think the Second World War came along, and my father's generation saw so much pain and suffering, they didn't want to repeat it. They didn't want to share their stories, and they sure didn't want to share stories from a war that had happened before them. So to me, there's a bit of a calling to my generation to make sure that future generations do remember their sacrifice, and we honor General Currie's commitment to his troops, that as a country we will forever revere their names.
So there was a recent tribute to your father as well too, was there not?
Yes, the Georgian College has named a football field after him. J.C. Massie Field, which was a family we're very, very proud of. And it's something that was important to my dad. My dad was a football player in high school before he went off and served RAF 692 Squadron. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service to our country, and that's for bravery above and beyond. It's the highest award that the Air Force can give a member. So we had all of his 7 grandchildren and his 7 great-grandchildren, and all there to celebrate that. So it was a great tribute to my dad.
That's great. And so you were recently Colonel Jamie Massie.
Still am.
And how did that come?
I was very honored. It was, I'm the second honorary colonel for Canadian Forces Base Borden. The first was Arch Brown, whose name sits on the barge across from me. And and it's funny, our families go back. My dad and Arch worked together at General Motors in the 1950s.
Oh, so
cool. Early 50s. So there was a bit of a history there. And it would have been 2008. Arch had retired from being the honorary colonel at the base and approached me, kind of sharing what his thoughts were about that and why it was important. And for me, it was an opportunity to serve in a different way. So I was very honored to do that, and have been absolutely blown away by the quality of men and women that serve in the Canadian Forces. Their sense of honor, their sense of duty, their commitment to country. It's just awe-inspiring, and it's a very humbling role for me to be in, to be able to work with these people. And
awesome.
It's been good.
That's awesome. So from there, though, there was your involvement in Vimy recently. You've had a recent trip.
We did. So maybe I can tell you just a little bit about what an honorary colonel is first, because it kind of explains it. Is that so? An honorary colonel has 3 mandates from the Canadian Forces, and they go back actually probably 300 years in military history, British military history.
Sure.
And the first is to honor the history and tradition of the base. So that's an easy one. Help build an esprit de corps amongst all ranks of the service that are on our base, and the third is help build a bridge between the base and the community. And with me, I kind of stretched it a little bit and made it the base, the community, and Georgian College, because Georgian College is very integral to our community and integral to the influences on the base. And the base is similar because the base is Canada's largest training base, which really makes it almost another university campus that's in our community.
And Georgian's a great spot to relay information too, right? To get information out there and as a source for history and for those students to learn.
Absolutely, and we've actually done a lot of communication between the base and the college, and Mary Lynn West Moynes has been instrumental in helping kind of put some different things together as we look to make sure that what training we're doing at the base for the CF, that post service, that those veterans can then leave and carry on, and that it's credible training that is measurable in something else that they want to proceed.
Interesting.
But it's those three things. So honor the history and tradition of the base, build an esprit de corps, and build a bridge. So on the 100th anniversary of the base, which was in June of 2016, we dedicated a monument. The Prime Minister came and shared that with us.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful monument.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
And the base had been founded in 1916, really to train soldiers for the Canadian Expeditionary Force that ultimately served overseas.
And how many from Base Borden was there? You said there was 50?
We trained 50,000 in that first year and a half, so many of those would have served at Vimy, the battle my grandfather served in. And
almost 4,000 people died at Vimy?
3,598 died, and over 7,000 severely wounded. So a very significant battle. The reason Vimy is important, I think, as a Canadian, is that it's the battle that we first fought together as 4 divisions. So from the Atlantic to Pacific, the Canadian Army was won, and that was the first battle that we had been able to be into. So to me, it was important, and as the honorary colonel, to honor the history and tradition of the base, the 100th anniversary, to help build an esprit de corps among the troops, and to connect our community.
Sure.
So we've gone out, we raised just over $1 million to build the monument. And the monument actually is in 3 places. The monument, obviously, the monument sits at the entrance to Canadian Forces Base Borden. And on the one magnificent wall, Marlene Hilton Moore is the artist from Hillsdale that designed it. It's beautiful, but it says, "Through these gates, the sons and daughters of a grateful nation pass, serving Canada with honor, duty, and courage, so all may live with freedom, democracy, and justice."
Which we deserve.
Which we deserve, but which all people deserve. And I think as Canadians, we're
kind of humble about it.
We are very humble about it. But I think hopefully it stands as an inspiration to future Canadian Forces members and all Canadians that transition on and off the base. The second part of the monument, though, is in France now, and there's a statue of a World War I bugler, which stands at our base entrance as well, will now stand in the Vimy Park. And then the third part is actually going to be in Meridian Square down here.
Good.
And what we did in April of 2015, we traveled with a group of almost 80 people from Barrie, which is, to me, was just amazing. Mostly donors that had given money to support this cause. And the Canadian government gave us permission for the first time to patriate soil, to take soil that was symbolic of the Canadians that had bled there. And we brought that soil home, including soil from a place where my grandfather had laid bleeding for 18 hours. So on a personal side, it was a personal journey.
And you said you found bullet shells and stuff in that soil too, around
Absolutely.
where your father would have been wounded.
It just keeps coming up out of the ground.
Incredible.
It was. And my children were all with us when we were there. And the second, so one urn stands ensconced, enshrined in the wall at Borden. The second will be in a wall beside the cenotaph in Meridian Square. So I think that's going to be a very neat connection. So it really ties France, Base Borden, and the city of Barrie together in a very significant manner.
Amazing. And for that, so much freedom and so much just amazing, wonderful gifts we get from those soldiers.
Absolutely.
And we owe them a world of thanks. We always do. So part of the things that blow me away about you is we were sitting here earlier and you were talking about some of your visions, and it was right after I had said how beautiful the view is from here, and I love the view from your office, and you were saying how just out back here on the other side of the lake, you have already come up with something for the Heritage Park.
Well, on the eastern end of Heritage Park, so the South Shore lands, we've made a proposal to the city to create another gathering place. I mean, what's so unique about Barrie is for 200 years that we've been settled here. The waterfront has been the connection, and most recently, we were very proud to be part of the Snowbirds Air Show that was here in June. There was 40,000 people.
I was there.
The year before, when the Tragically Hip played their last concert in Kingston, the mayor had organized and projection screens, and I think we had 20-some-odd thousand people downtown on the waterfront to participate in that iconic Canadian moment. So this is kind of formalizing it, and it really came out of two things. One, sitting in my office and looking at this amazing waterfront and amazing city. I think secondly, it came from the learnings of building the Barrie Molson Centre, that when we went out to build the Barrie Molson Centre, it really had never been done before.
Yeah, you definitely were a revolutionary when it came to new
innovative, maybe. And no revolutionary.
I think so.
Innovative, but I think that a lot of my pitch in those days was, it's who we are. It's Barrie, right? It's minus 30. It's February. You're in this arena cheering for your local hockey team. There's 4,000 of your neighbors, your friends, the people that you associate with, and for a community like ours to be able to be inside and participate in that, I think it's been a great thing. The arena's 22 years old now, and it's been a great center for our community to come together. And I think that the opportunity to do the same thing on the waterfront, to create this it's
a complex, right?
Yeah. So it'll be sports, it'll be baseball, football, lacrosse, rugby, it'll be culture, it'll be theater, it'll be festivals, whether it's Kempen.
And we need that, because since we lost Molson's Park, we lost that original big theater feel that Barrie had at one time. That, sure, there's Burl's Creek for those events, but for the Barrie community to, because Barrie people are kind of proud. I think it's a lot like Oakville, where people from Barrie really love being from Barrie.
Absolutely.
Us older people who grew up here.
Me.
Okay, you're a few years older than me. We grew up here. Well, most of it anyway. And you get this real love for the city. Absolutely.
Yeah. And for me, obviously very fortunate to be able to have my office that looks out over the city. And
it's cool.
And it inspires me every day.
So you don't live far from here. You've got this family that's been so community driven as well too, and they've been very involved. Tell me a bit about your kids and your wife and what's going on there with that, because they're cool.
Thank you. They're wonderful. We have Wendy and I met Wendy when I came and moved permanently to Barrie in the early 80s, and we have 4 children. Andrew's the oldest at
He's
33.
hilarious.
Thank you.
He's hilarious.
He works with me in our business here. And then Jamie and Jeffrey are 28, 26, and Ali is my youngest. He's 22. He is today the Canadian National Para-Snowboard Champion after facing some pretty tough challenges.
Would you share some of that with me as to what happened? Because you told me a bit of this off camera too, and I think people would be interested in this.
Ali tells the story better than anyone, but he was at the cottage, our summer homes up in Georgian Bay. He had 5 friends over. They were wakeboarding. It was one of those perfect summer days, not a ripple on the water, and they were surfing actually. And just some bad communication between Ali and the driver, and the boat went in reverse. He was behind the boat, and he tells the story where his feet were against the back of the boat, and then the one slipped off, and on a wakeboard boat, the propeller's back about 4 feet, so his leg went through the propeller. And I mean, it's in most cases it's fatal because
undertow through it, right?
You bleed out. I mean, that's really what happens. The
major arteries.
The propeller went through his leg and foot 5 times. But he's just a tough kid, and he always has had a great attitude. Big uphill battle. We're all very proud. I know his brothers and his mom are very, very proud of him for his journey that he's gone on. And
well, the toughness seems pretty genetic.
He's got something that's more than anything that I have for sure. But he is he's won a silver medal at the X Games, which I think was pretty big for him.
Very
a bronze
cool.
medal at the X Games. He's was 3rd in the world 2 years ago at the World Championships, and he's off to the Paralympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea this year. And they CBC interviewed him, and they said, what's important about, why is it important about winning? And Ali's response, and he's so sincere in it, he says that winning is the only thing for me because I want to stand at the top of the mountain, I want to wrap myself in the Canadian flag, and I want to sing "Oh Canada," and you only get to do that when you win gold.
Well, there's something about us Canadians too, that when somebody's standing at the top of the podium, we do tend to come together at a big Olympic events or things like that, and when we see the Canadian flag, we as a country, I think we really stand by it. I know I get choked up by it. I see anything and hear the anthem, I'm like, oh, guys, everybody just stop talking.
It's true. That's true.
So let's talk a bit more about your community involvement here too, because people know you as Georgian, the car dealership, but they forget that there's other things you do. You had involvement with the Colts at one time.
Yeah, 18 years.
Okay. And then you've also got an airline.
Yep.
And not everybody knows about that.
Started in Barrie.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
In 1984, I was involved with 9 other guys, and we paved a runway up on Ann Street, which became the Barrie Executive Air Park. And from those humble beginnings, I stayed in aviation, got involved in the charter business, and ultimately in the scheduled airline business. We operate today as Air Canada Express out of Toronto and out of Calgary. We fly to 29 different U.S. destinations, plus probably a dozen Canadian destinations between Western Canada and Ontario. And very, very proud of that. Great group of people have done an amazing job, built a world-class airline. We move probably 2.5 million passengers a year now.
So you're not some sort of small little company. That's a lot of people to be moving around.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, very proud of it.
Awesome.
And very
Well,
proud
kudos
of the
to
people
that.
that work in that company.
And so, but Georgian people know. People have known Georgian for a long time. When did you establish that? Was that just you?
That was in 1981.
Okay.
And actually, it was fun. My business partner that helped me establish that was my roommate in university. And he's still a partner today. That he was up here yesterday. He's from Michigan. So that's a 40-year friendship. I mean, I'm pretty blessed. The president of Georgian International Land Corp, which is our building arm and our development arm, he and I have been friends since we were 12, and I'm not going to do the math, but that's a lot of years. So we've been together that long.
Yeah.
Dan Rebel's my partner. He's our chief financial officer, very involved in our community as well. And Danny and I have been together over 25 years now. So.
I was in Rotary with Dan at one time, and his admiration of you is through the roof. And I think just about anybody who knows you is...
He's an amazing guy. He's probably the most humble guy that's contributed more than anybody I know to our community. Just does it under the radar.
Yeah, he seems like that. So, Georgian, how did that develop? How did that build up to be what it is now? Because it's a bit of a monster in the car dealership world in Canada for GM, isn't it?
We're the number 2 dealer in from a retail perspective in Canada, which I think when we started, which was 1981, I think we were at like 1,143. There was like 1,600 GM dealers in Canada at the time, and so obviously have grown an awful lot since then. Yeah, I mean the car business, we were pioneers, kind of same, I guess, storyline that we've talked about.
Yeah.
You know, we went to the south of Barrie when nobody else was down there. We built a bunch of fields, and I remember we opened in December of 1990, and Wendy, my wife, and I were down there probably 2 weeks before we opened, and I remember looking north, and you can see the lights of Barrie. It's wintertime, you know, it's snow in December, but the lights are bouncing off the clouds, and it's like you're on the prairies, and we're in Regina looking at Calgary. I mean, like, it's so far away, and I said, "Oh, this might not have been a good one. We might not have."
It worked out fine.
It's worked out great. I mean, the city's grown around us down there and continues to grow around us, so we're very fortunate.
You're a good anchor in that area of town. It's good.
It's been good.
So you had just even lightly touched on this new real estate aspect of Georgian. So tell me a bit about what are you doing with this?
So we've been in the real estate business since 1986. As I said, Dave Lunston and I have been friends since we were 12. And actually, there's a picture up there back in the 80s when we were developing a new headquarters for Intertan. We probably owned every interchange in Barrie, I think, through our lives. But today we are mainly a home builder, and we're fortunate. Last year we were named Best New Home Community in Canada by the Canadian Home Builders Association.
Nice. For
our project out at Braystone. And I think what we did was we really have kind of looked at, like most things we've done, is kind of looked at things different than other people or other developers, and said, you know, we're not just house builders, we're community builders. So we have a 110-acre farm contiguous with our development, and the idea there is that it's garden to table, that the residents, I was there on the weekend, they're all out picking pumpkins, you know, taking their pumpkins back, or, you know, we had raspberries, strawberries, apples, pears.
And that's community. That really is. I drove through that community, and I honestly was blown away by how I'm just impressed with people being involved. Neighbors should know neighbors and not build walls.
Well, it's
right?
Probably the things that we've talked about already a lot, about what it is to be Canadian. And I was always inspired by Norman Rockwell. That I thought he was an amazing artist that described, you know, Middle America, you know, through the 60s and the 50s, 60s, the early 70s, and he always painted these great pictures of these iconic scenes. And I almost feel like, you know, in a way that a lot of the things about our community, like if Norman Rockwell was alive, he would want to paint our community, the waterfront that we have, the Molson Center and the residents there, the farmers market downtown, the theater, the Meridian Place. There's just all these great places that our community comes together. And I think he would have painted Braystone as well, which is our development there. We have a big development in Collingwood. We're building almost 900 homes up in Collingwood as well. So, and
it's up and coming. Like, Collingwood has been up and coming for a while, but now they're starting to get the interest of a potential bigger highway and things like that could make Collingwood a real spot.
It truly is, and the properties that we own in Collingwood are all contiguous with the mountains, so that a lot of the houses are walk to the ski hill, walk home from the ski hill. You know, embrace the trails that connect the communities up there. So there's a lot of things that are about community again, and kind of what we've done with our business.
Nice. So then what's next for Jamie Massie? Like, you don't seem to stop. You can't, always trucking along. There's always something new and something amazing coming up. What's next on your plate other than?
I have a 7-year-old grandson, and that's I think what's next for me is trying to watch him grow up and enjoy just this place we live, and enjoy the quality of life that's here. And I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of my 4 sons. My wife she's the most amazing mom on the planet, and you know, she did so many things that, you know, you just have to honor her. When Allie got run over by the boat, I don't think she left his side, like literally did not leave his side until October, from July till October. She lived in his room.
That mother's love, right?
Yeah, so she's had a huge influence. So it's been fun for Wendy and I, as our sons have grown up now. We have a grandson. Just the 2 of us get to go and kind of chase him around now, and that's fun. Going to his hockey games.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So what, other than what's next for you, what do you do when you're not busy being busy? Like, you're always busy. You're an entrepreneur. It's in your blood. And you're a visionary. But what do you do to chill out?
We do lots of things. You know, we have a summer home up in Georgian Bay, which I got to spend a lot of time at this summer, which was wonderful. Wendy and I have traveled a fair bit. We like seeing different places, being different places. We both play golf together, which is fun. That the two of us get to play golf. We go out a lot of times, just play 9 holes at night.
Yeah.
I mean, I just embrace where we live. I embrace kind of our quality of life, and what we've been able to do with our family is, and you know, the fact that we travel a lot with our kids and my grandson, and spend summers at our summer home with them. I think that's probably what's most important to us.
Okay. So Jamie, you're such a visionary. I would love to know what you, sort of in a nutshell, could see changing or progressing, or part of your vision for what you hope for Barrie.
I think Barrie is the greatest city in the country, and the potential to enhance on it is amazing. I mean, the waterfront is the game changer for us, and I think as you look more into the 21st century, large companies, large corporations are going to look for communities like ours to situate their businesses in. It's not going to be Amazon, but because that's a big lot of people. But companies like that are going to look and say it's quality of life that we want for our employees. And you know, I think that's been a big standard with Georgian and its success. Is we've always cared a lot about our employee satisfaction, how happy they are to be here. And I think when you look at where the city of Barrie is going and the things that we've done, and we talk about the waterfront stadium, the Molson Center, the new airport that we have, the hospital we have, the presence of Georgian College, the library system, the community system. I mean, it's just, there's all these wonderful building blocks that are in place for us to to continue to build a great community. And I think, the relationship with the base is another great positive that changes what this is. So I guess in a short form, if I could see the city, look out 50 years, it'll be a city dotted with more significant investment from significant global companies that have chosen to come and live here. But I hope, and what my vision still says, is that this idea of Norman Rockwell painting Middle America, Middle Canada, will still exist, and that there will be these moments, these iconic Canadian moments, that people continue to gather on our waterfront, or at the Molson Center, or at Meridian Square, that we share, and that the important things we talked about, especially what the freedom has meant that the Canadian Forces have enshrined for us over this last 150 years as a nation now, is that we still will be able to gather. We'll enjoy that. We'll celebrate each other, celebrate our community. And to me, that's the most important thing.
It's nice to be able to work, live, play, grow, all those things in one community, and there's a chance that we can bring back a lot of the industry that we've lost. And
I think we're going to bring back more industry than we've
better than ever.
More high-paying white-collar jobs. What we've done with Bank of Montreal and TD and
was awesome.
And the IBM Center that's in the south end of town. That's leading edge, and it's kind of under the radar. But that's who our community is going to be.
Well, this community adores you, and I want to thank you for being a part of this community and for taking the time today to meet with me and share all this incredible vision and your family with us today.
Great.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Cheers.
Thank you.